So how many podcasts have you done now?
Um, I haven't been keeping track, but I think they're almost 100 now in my playlist.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
They say
Anyway.
one um, route to have a successful podcast is consistency. So
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've been slowly gaining more subscribers. I still remember when I had like 7 subscribers. I have 75 now, which isn't very many still because some people have like millions, but it's more than I had. I'm getting a bit of an echo here. Are you hearing an echo on your end?
let me see. Maybe my volume might be. Maybe I'll have to get some headphones. Is headphones the right way to do this? I wonder.
They usually work better just for like hearing each other, because if you don't have them, sometimes there's a bit of a delay.
Okay, let me grab my headphones. They're just over on the other side here. 1 second.
Sure. Yeah, I didn't do the intro for this yet anyway. So, yeah, so for those of you watching, welcome to another episode of Mindgasms podcast. And yeah, I didn't mention I'm talking to Channing today, and I haven't talked to him for a long time. We used to train for powerlifting together years ago, but
Yeah, that
yeah,
was many moons ago.
yeah. How many years was that? Like 6 years ago, maybe longer.
Oh, what year is it?
It's 2019.
2019. I'd say probably 8 or 9 years, maybe 8 years or something like that since that
Wow.
place.
And we're both much smaller now, hey?
Yeah, I mean healthier probably too, I would imagine.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say so, definitely. I was
Yeah.
fus- I was like really muscular, and then you got up to that point too.
Yeah, it was an interesting time. I learned a lot about uh the ego, it was mostly ego. Is why I was pursuing any of that. So
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's a good point, because you want to get those numbers, and the more you can lift, the more it can feed your ego, right?
well, exactly, right. And I thought I was a lot better than uh everybody that I was trying to be better than, all like the typical gym goers. I thought I had found this new, better way to be, and I thought, uh, it was pure
Yeah.
ego. I can't
Oh
even,
yeah.
I won't lie about it. I enjoyed it. Obviously, it was fun. Like there's nothing like getting amped up, listening to some loud music and lifting as much as you can. But you get hurt a few times, and it starts to catch up to you, and you realize it's just not really worth it.
Yeah, and like there are two things I just thought of in relation to what you just said. Oh, one is that I remember like the tribal aspect of powerlifting too, that we were all really a part of. Like, don't go running. Running is for fags. Why wouldn't you just lift stuff? And
Yeah.
and now I like to do kind of like a variety of different things. I do sort of like CrossFit or high intensity intervals with like kettlebells and body weight exercises on one day, and then I do yoga on another day, and then one day a week I still go and lift heavy weights, but I try to be more careful with it and like sort of less ego driven than I was. And
Right.
for me it was like I didn't get any serious injuries like some of you guys did, like Shane and Shinjan did. But for me, it was partially that I just kind of got bored with doing the same lifts over and over and trying to do the same kind of goals. And now I like doing like a variety of different things like that.
Yeah, no, it's definitely better. It feels better. Uh, you know, Evolutionarily, we're not supposed to be do it. That's not what our bodies are for. Lifting crazy amounts of weight, especially because it's like, it's on this barbell that's perfectly calibrated. You get
Hmm.
to use all this gear and everything. Like humans are supposed to lift things. It's supposed to be like logs and functional stuff. That's why strongman, I guess, would have a more practical application
Yeah.
to like real life and stuff.
Yeah.
Like you said, like running and yoga and all that sort of stuff. It's just so much more practical for the human body. It's like it's what we're
Yeah.
supposed to be able to do.
Yeah.
So
Actually you mentioned strongman. I don't know if you saw, I forget what his fucking name is, but I was watching a Joe Rogan podcast recently with a strongman
oh yeah,
competitor, and he was saying that for the average person, he doesn't even recommend deadlifting, because he was
yeah,
saying he was basically talking about mostly back issues. And I was thinking,
yeah,
wow, for a strongman to say that, that's interesting. That's part of why I'm glad, like, I did I did sort of like totally stop lifting heavy weights for maybe like a year or two, and then I sort of got, or maybe it was even longer than that, and then I sort of gradually got back into it a little bit. But I really like only doing the heavy lifting like that 1 day a week or so now, because that like it's part of what we talked about. Like it's just safer for preventing injuries. Like you were saying too, it's lifting weights is, like, evolutionarily speaking, that's a natural thing too. But like you were saying, just lifting heavy ass fucking weights like 4 times a week or more or something like that, and then just eating like it's your job all the time is not really that healthy.
yeah. It might be fun, but it doesn't really have much, carry over into any sort of functional application into life. Like
Yeah,
you're talking about that guy, I can't remember his name, but it's he said deadlifting is basically not a good idea for the average person to do. Like it
yeah,
really only is going to be beneficial like if you are trying to deadlift more, pretty
yeah,
much is what he said. And it's true. I mean, I think people because nowadays it's like the thing to do, right? Everyone is in the gym squatting and deadlifting and benching is, and like that's the only way to work out. Like it's
yeah,
just it's kind of funny how trends go and how people think they should behave based on things they hear and what other people are doing and stuff. And it's not often people really take a look at what they're doing and what they want and are able to formulate some sort of plan based on their own goals, because not everybody wants to do the same stuff, and most people don't want to be powerlifters or strongmen. So I mean, yeah, maybe you can deadlift a couple times a week or once a week or something. It doesn't have to be to the point where you're about to die or or severely injure yourself. It's a good
yeah,
functional movement to do sometimes, but yeah, people just kind of get carried away with it. There's so many people that just do it and they don't even really understand why they're doing it. It's kind of
yeah,
funny.
yeah. And the part of that, like, to go back to that ego aspect of it too, I still even have a little problems with that sometimes myself. Like, a few times recently, even though I'm only really lifting like once a week or so, there were a few times recently where I just listened to my ego too much, and I did like one too many reps, and I got like really minor injuries recently. Like, I think I went and saw my doctor, and he said that I bruised the cartilage around a few of my ribs because I went too heavy on squats once. And then I think it was, I think I kind of injured my ankle doing push presses a little bit. It was only really minor too, like it didn't break or sprain anything. But that's why, like,
Right.
now I try to be really careful of not doing even one more rep if I have any doubt in my mind that I'm going to complete it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just not worth it, right? I mean, it's not like you're trying to compete to be anything. You're not trying to reach some ultimate fitness goal. You're just trying to enjoy yourself and challenge yourself to a certain degree without compromising too much.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's a hard battle to. It's hard to figure out. Like the ego is it's a good thing and it's a bad thing and it's a complicated thing. And
Oh yeah.
you got to be humbled a few times before you can really start to dial in, like what am I dealing with here? Why am I doing all this stuff that I'm doing, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, actually, I actually hurt myself today, which is why I have time to sit down. Usually I'm flat out on the go. I haven't taken a day off from the gym in probably 2 months.
Oh wow.
Yeah, no, I've been on this crazy.
What have you been doing for workouts lately?
So basically lately, what I've been doing, I've been posting on my Instagram lately. I really like to motivate people and inspire people to go above and beyond, and to allow people to believe that they can do a little bit more than they think they can do. So what I've been doing lately, pretty much since the snow melted. I live in Eagle Ridge, which is about 16 kilometers away from the gym that I go to. So I bike to the gym every day. I work out for about 4 hours, depending on
shit, man.
what I'm doing. And then I bike home.
What do you do for 4 hours?
So I kind of do I have a basic split, push day, pull day, and a leg day. And I just mix up my exercises. I don't ever really focus too much on numbers or anything. Most of what I'm doing is I kind of build up like a general baseline strength, and then I start to work on endurance, like muscular endurance and mental endurance. So I always try and push myself way past what I think I can do. You know, when you get to that point where you really want to quit and you have every reason to quit, I just want to keep going. I want to keep doing it, and it's been really fun, you know, because once you bring yourself into that dark place, that point where you're pushing past where you thought you could, you start to learn a lot about yourself. And I think it has a lot of carryover into so many different aspects of life. You know, I recently actually just quit my job and I sold my house, and I sold essentially everything that I own. And yeah, my life has just been crazy lately. So, you know, I've been itching to get on a podcast and talk to people like you, or, you know, people that I used to know, and just catch up and everything, because it's just so interesting how much your life can change.
Oh yeah, my life has changed a lot
5-10
too.
years. Yeah, I mean, you know, I've been watching some of your podcasts, and I think it's so cool because podcasts are such a massive part of my life. I spend a lot of time alone.
Too.
And yeah, like I walk a lot. I walk 30 to 40 kilometers a day normally. So podcasts are just always playing. And I think it's really cool that you're doing one. And I'm just, it's so cool to be on podcast.
Cool, man. Yeah, I'm really glad we could talk, because, you know, our experience, like knowing each other, we haven't really talked that much in a long time. So it's like, it's not something that I was expecting. So I was pleasantly surprised when you wanted to do that. So it's cool.
Yeah, you know, I think it's definitely one of my dream jobs to be able to do a podcast. You know, even if I could just do it just to sustain a simple lifestyle. You know what I mean? I don't want to be rich. I don't want to be Joe Rogan or anything like that.
Oh yeah, I've thought that before too. Like if I could make a living, like even a really small living doing this, or like any of my other creative forms of expression that I enjoy, that would be the dream for me.
Yeah, I mean, you can't argue that would. It just seems so logical, the most fulfilling way to. Because it's weird, like we all are individuals, and we all have specific things that we like, and each and every person is different, and it's just so weird how we all end up essentially doing the same things within society just to make ends meet.
Yeah,
it's sad because there's so much wasted potential, right? Like,
yeah, for sure. I have to have jobs to make money, because I can't make a living doing a podcast. But I mean, I recently started a job working for a moving company, which I actually like more than other jobs that I've had, because I've had like average bullshit jobs or in customer service and stuff, where you have to do all this pointless busy work, and you have to make sure you're always looking busy, even if you're not busy, and you have to like pretend to care about someone about this new shoe that just came out or some shit. And with this, we just go and move someone's stuff, and there's an incentive to do it efficiently and quickly, but also carefully so you don't break anything, because as soon as we get the move done, we can all go home. So like yesterday, for example, I only worked for 4 hours because we went and we moved stuff in one person's garage and then in someone else's house, but we had 5 people, so it didn't take that long. So I like that sort of
Yeah.
thing. If I'm gonna have like, if I'm gonna have to have something that pays me money in addition to this, because I do have a Patreon account, but I only have 3 patrons and I make $15 a month. So obviously that's not a living. So
Hey man, it's a step in the right direction, and you know what? Sometimes the hardest part about starting anything is that first step. You know, because it's so easy. There's so many reasons not to do something that is hard. I mean, you look at the gap between somebody like yourself who is just starting out, and you know you have 75 subscribers, and you love it so much, but you look at the gap between yourself and somebody like Joe Rogan, who
mhm. He's
is
my idol.
way off the charts. And it's,
Yeah.
you have every reason to think that like, why the hell would I even try? Like, you know, this market is cornered. Like, I have no chance. You know what I mean? But it's so admirable to me that people like yourself start up these.
Oh, you got cut off for
I think
about
we just got
30 seconds.
disconnected there for a second.
Oh yeah, I lost you for about 30 seconds there.
Yeah, yeah. I think we're back now.
I thought you were just complimenting me on starting my podcast.
Yeah, no, I was just saying. I'm not sure what came through or what not came through, but no, I just think it's cool because you know you have every reason to shy away from something like this, and I think it's just awesome that you're doing it. And I will be your fourth Patreon or
Oh yeah?
whatever you. Yeah, absolutely. I
Oh
think it's
awesome, man.
awesome.
Awesome. Thanks, man. And yeah, like you were saying how the first step is the most difficult one. So I think it sounds like what with what we were saying before we started this, that you and I were actually similar in that respect too. Be like the first time I ever was on a podcast, it was one about religion for this group, Mixed Mental Arts, that I'm a part of now. And I remember the first time I did that, and probably for several other ones after that, every time I would just like being on camera, it would make me so nervous that even after a while, I could feel my face getting flushed from being just self-conscious or something like that.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I know. I used to struggle with social anxiety really bad, so I know what it's like. But definitely something through listening to a lot of people that I listen to. I listen to a lot of Jordan Peterson. I listen to a lot of Jordan Peterson talk to people that agree with him and talk to people that disagree with him. And it's one of the most important things you can do is just always, whatever it is that you're afraid of, or whatever it is that you think you can't do, that is the perfect reason to do it.
Yeah,
And, you know, that works for essentially everything. Anxiety, with what you're afraid of, what you think you can't do. You know, it's just, it's true. I mean, social anxiety is definitely one of those things for me that there was a time in my life that I thought, you know, I'm fucked. There's nothing I can do with this. This is just the way I am, and uncomfortably um, forcing myself into situations, even though I know it was going to be a complete catastrophic failure. You know, you, if you get to the point where you're not afraid of failing anymore, then you know that's a huge step in the right direction. Because now what are you anxious of if you're not afraid to fail? You know what I mean? You might still fail, but if you're not afraid of it, then that's when you can start to really get better at those things that you're afraid of. And I think oftentimes it's weird how it works out. The things that at least for me anyway, it seems like the things that I was most afraid of and most stopping myself from doing are ironically the things that I'm thriving at the most now. It's so strange how that works.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Like which things are you thriving at now?
Well, definitely social anxiety part of it. It's, I used to not even be able to talk to a stranger in the mall or the gym or something. Now it's like I can't get enough. Like it's like I have this craving to just meet as many interesting people as possible. And I just want to hear them tell me about their lives and tell me their story and try and relate to it. And it's just so strange because that is I didn't even realize that that was something that I could do. You know what I mean? Like I didn't even realize that was something that I would ever think would be possible. But now it's
Oh
like I can't
yeah.
get enough of it.
Oh yeah, that's just like me too, man. Like I've always been really introverted and self-conscious and everything like that my whole life too. And I never would have expected that I would get to the point where I have a podcast where I enjoy talking to lots of interesting people about interesting topics like as much as I can. And it's like it it makes me think about one aspect of being an introvert is that you don't necessarily want to go and be the center of attention at a party with a whole bunch of random people or something like that. But if you're having a conversation with someone you know really well about something that interests you a lot, then you can just talk forever too. And I've noticed with myself too, I've gotten way better at that social anxiety too. Like you were saying about yourself, I don't even really feel that anymore. Like I don't get nervous when I have to go and be around people, and it's almost like I've sort of done that like fake it till you make it thing until it actually works. Like it sometimes seems when I go to the gym or something like that, I'll I'll go and like be polite and say, "Hey, do you want this plate I just used or something?" which I would never used to do. And
Right.
it's almost like I'm much more charismatic than I used to be before too. Like people are come like this guy who worked at the gym the last time I was there, he was telling me about this little challenge with flipping a heavy medicine ball or something like that that they did the other day. And then the last time I went to the gym before that, this guy saw me deadlifting and he gave me his little container of liquid grip stuff that he had that I didn't even know exist, which is it's so cool that that sort of thing can get totally flipped around, like you said, and you can become good at things that used to be your weaknesses. Like another one of those for me is that I also tutor now. I it's hard to find enough students, but I usually can get at least like one or two at a time. But even the fact that I can get paid at all to do that is amazing because when I was growing up in school, I always didn't do very well in school. But then when I became an adult, I developed an interest in learning, and now I'm like a total nerd, and I love learning about all sorts of stuff. And I'm smart enough that I can actually tutor people and help them learn, which is so incredible to me too, especially since I enjoy it, since I can figure out how to explain something to someone that helps them understand it better, and it makes me feel good because I'm helping someone, I'm doing something useful and I'm helping someone that way.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's yeah. You said it perfectly. I think it makes me think too to flip it back to the ego thing. I sometimes I self-analyze a lot, and I really question my own intentions with things because I think we even lie to ourselves sometimes, and we don't even realize it. It's like to this social anxiety thing. People like you and I, we seem to have conquered our fear, and we seem to be doing quite well in social situations now. And I'm wondering, I haven't figured it out yet exactly, but I'm wondering how much of it is our ego that is saying, basically, I can do this, look at me kind of thing? Or is it really something that we actually like? I'm still trying to figure it out. I know I do value, one of my most fulfilling things, I can't even explain to you sometimes when I have great conversations, it's like I'm on drugs. It's like the most fulfilling thing I have ever experienced in my life when I have these deep, meaningful, analytical conversations where people are challenging each other's ideas, and you're able to come to some sort of agreement. And oftentimes, like, through these types of conversations, you really start to learn more and more, because it's not like everything that you say in a 2 or 3 hour conversation you had it all mapped out. You know what I mean? Like, it's constantly just like generating new thoughts and ideas in your head, and you basically, if you're good at articulating your thoughts, which is another really hard thing to do for people that like talking, because it's really hard to portray your thoughts as something that somebody else can understand. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's why having that vocabulary is so important. Um, but yeah, no, I just love these long form conversations. But I
yeah.
do sometimes wonder, like, my emphasis on being very social and confident in regular everyday situations, like at the mall or at the gym or at restaurants. I, uh, I sometimes wonder how much of my ego gets involved in that. What do you think about that?
You mean like as if maybe it's something that you that your ego is encouraging you to seek out because it's something that you're successful in now, and it used to be such a weak point for you now, so it means that much more to your ego to just like even easily conquer what used to be like defining setbacks of you or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's hard to say what's, because obviously the ego developed for a reason. I mean, we have it because it keeps us alive in one way or another. So I can't say that it's all bad, but it is interesting to think about for me because, yeah, well, I mean, you explained it exactly how I was trying to. Do you think that's
There's
a real thing, or is
Yeah,
that
yeah,
for
for
you?
sure. I think there's a really great book that I read called Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday, and it's about Stoic philosophy, which is the first type of philosophy that I got interested in. And now lately I've been doing these deep dive philosophy episodes with my friend Tim Keefe, who has a master's degree in philosophy, and it's so interesting because I'm learning so much. The basically anyway, this book, Ego is the Enemy, it's partially because um, ego is sort of one of the you could say it's one of the things that Stoic philosophers talk about a lot, or at least frequently, is conquering your ego. And I like this book a lot because it sort of turned the sort of like notion I had in my head. It turned on its head the notion that I had in my head of what what ego is basically. Like I sort of had this one-sided negative view about it because I was just thinking, well, it's bad to be egotistical because then you're just an asshole and you do bad things. But another aspect of it that this book pointed out to me is that ego can be a good thing too, like you were kind of saying already, because uh, for one thing, it can be a problem for people who are like more nervous and self-conscious, like maybe you or I aren't naturally. And so that's why the one way in which it can be a good thing. But then also, just in general, it can be a good thing because it helps you accomplish things. Because you don't want to accomplish things unless you feel confident enough that you want to do that. And you get more confident by using your ego to do that. And
Right.
this reminds me too of I don't know if you saw relatively recently a Joe Rogan podcast with David Goggins.
Yeah. I've pretty much seen every
Yeah.
Rogan podcast. So yeah, I
Oh,
definitely saw that. Yeah,
David Goggins is so awesome, hey. He was
he is. Yeah.
I was reminded of him when you were talking about that in terms of workouts earlier. Like the in and I was reminded of that mindset you get when you're going for a lift and you're doing powerlifting or something. It's almost like this especially in terms of workouts. It's almost like this sadistic or like sadomasochistic mindset or something like that, where it's like, you know, this is going to suck, but you're excited about it and you're going to war against this because you know you're going to conquer this, and it makes you and it's like it's almost like a spiritual experience to people who really love working out in some way, because it's like you're doing this thing that's so challenging that it requires all of your focus. So there's almost like a mindfulness aspect because you're not focusing on anything else, but it's like you're enjoying the suffering because you're also getting this release of endorphins while you're doing it, and then you get the stronger endorphin release after because you've accomplished this goal. And then there's, like you were talking about earlier, and like David Goggins talks about, there's that psychological achievement aspect too, and how a large part of doing things that are difficult, and even perhaps especially difficult physical things, is psychological warfare and mental toughness. Like David Goggins talks about that last aspect in particular a hell of a lot, right?
Yeah. No, it's so interesting. Fitness is a great example of, it's such a great tool on how to build character, because essentially anybody can do it. You know what I mean? Anybody that has a pair of shoes and a water bottle can go conquer the day with fitness, and they can slowly but surely build their confidence and their character, and they can really learn a lot about themselves. And it's just such a great way for somebody to start to learn how. Can you still hear me? I think something happened. Yeah.
Yeah, I just muted myself because I'm moving stuff
Okay.
and making noise.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's just such a great, easy tool for most people to learn how to build discipline and develop their character. I know it's worked for me. I mean, the stuff that I've been doing lately, if somebody had asked me a year ago if I could do that, I would have just laughed and said, there's no way. And like I said, like today is the first day that I've taken off from the gym in like 2 months. And it's not even just like I'm going to the gym. Like my workouts aren't especially hard at the gym. I'm not especially strong or fast or impressive or anything. But my work capacity has just gone up so much. And it's probably good that I hurt myself, because it was time to take a day off. But I have been in autopilot lately, like survival mode. I don't even think. I just, like, I wake up in the morning and I immediately start getting ready to go do all this over again. And it's just, even just today, having a day off, um, it's like I don't know what to do. It's really weird, but I'm facing all these urges. Like I just want to eat, I want to consume, and this discipline that I have built lately has really shown me it's such an easy path for me to either make the right decision or make the wrong decision. Because I think deep down we all know, if we go deep enough, we all know exactly what we need to do to accomplish what we want to accomplish. And we all have problems. And I think we have the exact solution. We know it, but we just always find ways around it, because oftentimes the solution to a problem is extremely difficult. And in order to face that difficult solution or difficult problem head on and not be afraid requires a certain amount of practice and discipline. And I think fitness is just such a great tool to develop that discipline. And once you have it, it's amazing how you can carry it over into so many other aspects of your life. Whether
Yeah.
it's something that you want to accomplish with your career, or it can be anything. And I've definitely witnessed that firsthand. Um, it took a lot of courage for me to finally quit my job. It got to the point where I really just I couldn't do it anymore. Like I hated it so much, and it was I was working this job that was actually a good job, but it wasn't fulfilling anything for me, and it was leaving me with this feeling of emptiness and lack of purpose and everything. And it took a lot of courage for me to finally do it. And oftentimes once you make that hard decision and you face something head on, you really learn what it is to make that hard decision. And once you feel that, once you face it and you get through to the other side, it's like something opens up for you and you can start just doing it to everything in life. And I think it's absolutely crazy, and all of that can start with just going for a run,
Yeah, yeah, well said. Yeah, like I like how you're talking about how like working out, the discipline required for that can carry over into all other aspects of life, and I think that's definitely true because like we were talking about, it's it's mental discipline. Like this is what like all those people like David Goggins and Joe Rogan and Jocko Willink and these people with like enormous amounts of discipline. That's what they always say. It's psychological discipline much more than anything else. Um, I wanted to comment though on you mentioned Jordan Peterson earlier. That's interesting because I've actually had a lot of discussions about Jordan Peterson on here, and I've talked to people with very different opinions on him too, and my opinions of him have changed a little bit too. Um, I
Mm.
I used to be a huge fan of his at first because I thought he seemed so smart and profound and stuff like that. But now my mind has changed a little bit. But um, well, I've talked to people on my YouTube channel. One of them is my friend who lives in Ontario, who he's really Christian and he's a huge fan of Jordan Peterson. And he's been in like I think at least a handful of my episodes now. Some with that guy Tim Keefe I mentioned, who's an expert on philosophy too, about philosophy and theology. And then I've talked maybe a few times to other people who like really hate Jordan Peterson, and then I've also talked to more people who have what I would say is more of a neutral position on him now, and so part of why part of what changed my mind a little bit is that I think it was originally through um, this guy Thaddeus Russell, who I'm a huge fan of. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's a historian, and he has a podcast called the Unregistered Podcast, and he talks to a lot of it is a lot of it is conversations about politics and geopolitics and stuff, and then he also he's talked with prostitutes, and he's talked with like other sex workers and people who've worked in the illegal drug industry and stuff like that. And he also talks about this philosophy called postmodernism, which is what Jordan Peterson talks about a lot. He uses this term postmodern neo-Marxist, which
Yeah.
now that I have learned a lot more about philosophy, I've realized that that term in particular makes no sense whatsoever if you actually understand the philosophy. Like I've if you go and read people like Foucault and Derrida, who Jordan Peterson criticizes, you see that like a lot of the stuff that he accuses them of believing is totally the opposite too. And postmodernists and Marxists are also a total opposition to each other too, because postmodernists are actually anti-authoritarian and they're anti-absolutist, and Marxists are authoritarian and absolutist. And people like Foucault, in particular, for example, um, there's there's a book of his that I really like called The History of Sexuality, and he talks about how the history of the way that sexuality was looked at and how it changed from the 1600s and on from there in the modern era. And one of his main criticisms basically is inventing these categories called heterosexual and homosexual and so on and so forth, because before then there was like there wasn't the word homosexual, so there were gay people, of course, but people in general didn't really care as much because there wasn't a word for it and it wasn't demonized in the same way. So the that's a really rambly way of saying that one of Foucault's main problems is basically identity politics. Like, he doesn't like this this whole thing of creating these groups of people, and these people are more oppressed than these other people, and that sort of thing. So I think that when Jordan Peterson starts to talk about philosophy, he often, and I'm sure not an expert, but based on what I've learned, it seems like he's very ill-informed in terms of that. But like, I also agree with a lot of other people that his his psychological advice, since he's a psychologist, is very useful. And I think the way that he looks at mythology in general, I especially like it when he compares different mythologies, like in his first book, Maps of Meaning. I liked that a lot too. And I also agree with some of his criticisms, or some criticisms of him, like how he says that, like, the nuclear family is the most important way to be, and that sort of thing. But that's that's my really long-winded way of saying that I think there are some good things about Jordan Peterson and some things that he's a little confused about. But as is often the case with me, I am sort of confused by both the uber pro Jordan Peterson people and both the uber anti Jordan Peterson people. I'm sort of baffled by both of those.
Yeah, well, I think you have a really healthy perspective on how to look at uh, something like the, because he just kind of exploded out of nowhere, and
Yeah,
it all started with this uh, gender stuff, this gender pronoun stuff, and
yeah,
then it just took off from there, and it was kind of crazy. I think a lot of stuff about Jordan Peterson. Well, first of all, I'll say if you agree with everything that anyone says, then you're stupid.
I agree.
Even if who you're agreeing with is considered to be one of the most intelligent human beings to ever walk the face of the planet, if you learn everything about what they thought and what they said and you disagree with absolutely nothing, then you're just simply not thinking. Because there's no way that I'm not saying that it's not possible for someone to be very articulate and very informed about what they think and possibly be as close to 100% as you can be about being correct about things. But as an individual, this, we all think differently and we all have different reasons for thinking the way that we think. So it's just not possible for you to agree with everything that someone says. And if you do, then you really need to, take a step back and evaluate yourself, because everybody has their own ideas and thoughts, even if they're only slightly different from other people's. I mean, you just can't agree with everything that somebody says. But I
Yeah,
think
sure.
a lot of these people that love Jordan Peterson, they're part of a group. I don't want to say they're part of a group because I really don't like the idea of having to be a part of a group, but um, they're just they love the outrage that he's causing, and they don't really understand what he's saying. When he lectures for 2 hours about purpose and meaning, and I listened to one of his podcasts. I really liked this one. It just came out recently. It was called, I think it was called Who Dares to Say They Believe in God or something like that.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen that one. I was
So
I was
good.
sort of turned off by the title a little bit.
Yeah, and you know, being like a, because I remember you and I used to be
Yeah.
militant atheist type.
Oh yeah, that's one
Definitely,
thing that's one thing that's changed about me too. By the way, I would still consider myself
yes.
an atheist, but I'm certainly not militant. And I like I mentioned earlier, I've enjoyed having conversations with a few people who I consider to be pretty good friends who are Christians on here.
Oh, absolutely. I know I talk to people all the time about their faith and about their religion, and especially after listening to Jordan Peterson talk about how deep the the purpose of the story goes within us. I've definitely shifted my perspective. I still don't think that there is a God in the sky that controls things or cares about what I do at night when I'm naked. But but you know, it's back to the Jordan Peterson thing. Like people who love him, a lot of them don't understand what he's saying. Because what he's saying, like that podcast, Who Dares to Say They Believe in God? I had to listen to that like 5 times before I really started to grasp just what it was he was saying. Because it's a 2 or 3 hour podcast or whatever it is, and it's not like you're locked in the whole time, and it's not like you're conscious enough to be able to rewind every time you weren't locked in for 30 seconds, because there's not a whole lot of time where he's saying things that um, you need to listen to everything, because what he's saying is super important, and it really made me think about stuff. And I don't particularly like how popular he is, because when somebody's that popular and you have all sorts of people basically blindly following what he's saying, because they it's like politics. Like, you vote for the person that says only a couple of things that you like, and everything else that they say you kind of agree with. A lot of people do that. It's dangerous.
Oh,
um,
for sure. Yeah.
yeah, so I
We
think,
were talking about this yesterday, actually, in the podcast I did yesterday with that. Oh yeah, I was telling you about that with that guy who he used to be a journalist, and now he teaches elementary school students, and he teaches about journalism.
yeah.
We were talking about that political aspect, about how go people fall into these political tribes too, and they're like, I'm on team liberal and we're right about everything, and those conservatives are wrong about everything, or I'm in team conservative and those liberals are wrong about everything and we're right about everything. Or you could say that about libertarians or like anarchists or anyone.
Yeah, no, it's so listen, like, I don't have the answers. I'm not claiming that I have answers to complicated situations or complicated problems, but
Of course.
I can probably tell you a bunch of things that won't work, and that you know politics kind of speaks for itself in a lot of ways, and how it doesn't work, and how stupid it is in so many ways, and it kind of falls back into that thing about a guy like Peterson becoming so popular, and there's so many people that just they literally don't understand the depth of what he is saying, and they have no way of knowing that they don't understand it, because they think that they do, because they're only reading what he's saying on the surface. And
So what
as you
so
know,
what are they not understanding about it? Like they're not understanding it at a deep enough level?
that's what I think. I mean, I don't have statistics to prove that, but I do
Oh, of
know,
course.
speaking from experience, that I am extremely guilty of um, dumbing things down when they shouldn't be dumbed down. You know what I mean? Like, oversimplifying things. And I
Hmm.
think a lot of people are just, by no fault of their own, just oversimplifying what he's saying. And it's impossible for that not to happen, because he's he's hard to follow. When he talks for 2 hours, he's fucking hard to follow. You really got to like think, like, what did he just say? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
think about that for a minute. What does that even mean? And I
It's
truly believe don't not enough people take the time to really think deep enough about
yeah.
that, about not even only him. Like, there's a lot of people out there. I love this new era of conversation. Like you've heard of the intellectual dark web. Like I don't know why they had to name it, but I like a lot of the people that are involved in it. And I think these conversations that are happening are probably one of the most important things that will ever occur in my life, in terms of, how society thinks about life in general. That's a very, very general way of putting the value of these types of conversations. But
Oh, I agree.
yeah,
I sort of have more of a kind of neutral opinion on the intellectual dark web too. I would say it actually, I would say my perspective and how it has changed is similar to that of Jordan Peterson. Like it's that's why this group Mixed Mental Arts that I'm a part of, and I should see if maybe you could join that Facebook group if you want to. Just be aware that there are some really strong political beliefs in there. But
it's okay. They're all over Facebook. I'm used to
yeah,
it.
oh yeah, but part of it is that because that actually contributed to my opinion changing a little bit on Jordan Peterson and the intellectual dark web itself too. Because again, it's interesting. There are people who are like, it's same as with Jordan Peterson. There are people who are super pro intellectual dark web, and then there are people who are super anti intellectual dark web. And I would say that now my opinion is more neutral in that I think that what they're doing is very good, but I think that especially a few of them, like I think in particular Eric Weinstein sometimes acts like they're more like big and special than I think they really are. Like they are doing a good thing with having these sorts of conversations, but I don't think they're like being these like righteous rebels challenging people and bringing up all of these people as much as they think they are. And in some ways, I would say the reason, in terms of the specific thinkers that are often labeled as the intellectual dark web, part of why I have trouble understanding why people either love them all or dismiss them all is that they're kind of like they have some very different thoughts on things in some ways. Like I said, I have a more neutral position on Jordan Peterson, but he and Sam Harris are certainly at odds about some things, and that's another one who my opinion has changed on in more recent years too. I used to be a huge fan of Sam Harris when I was a militant atheist, but
Of course.
now I'm sort of more neutral on him. I don't listen to his podcasts anywhere near as much as I used to, but I think his voice still has value. And I would say like I'm not really a big fan of Ben Shapiro in the intellectual dark web, but then again, I also think people's criticisms of him go too far too, like calling him alt-right or Nazi or some crazy shit like that. And but I also like I'm I like a lot of what particularly the Weinstein brothers say, Eric Weinstein and Brett Weinstein, and obviously Joe Rogan is often included in this, and he's like my biggest idol in terms of podcasts and everything like that.
Yeah, Joe Rogan is unparalleled, man. Like people really, and he gets a lot of credit from these intellectual dark web type people.
Mm-hmm.
They know that he is, he doesn't, he kind of portrays himself to be this like idiot or like this chimp. He always calls himself a chimp, or I'm just a stupid chimp.
Or
He's fucking intelligent. And you know what's cool? The coolest thing about Joe Rogan is sometimes when you're listening to people like Eric Weinstein or Brett Weinstein or like Sam Harris, Richard, like anyone who's extremely intelligent, a lot of people just like don't want to hear what they have to say because they're almost like too intelligent and they can't come down to the regular Joe's level.
Like they can't articulate their thoughts clearly enough.
Yeah, it's like they can't make regular people understand it. And as good as what the intellectual dark web is trying to do, like if you can't get your message across to most people, then it might not work. You know what I mean? And that's where Joe Rogan is so important because, like, who doesn't want to be like Joe Rogan? He's a
Yeah,
badass. He's got tattoos. He looks cool as shit. He's an MMA guy. He has all different types of people on his podcast. Like, he has the coolest life ever. But at the same
yeah.
time, he can hold up a conversation with these type of people for like 3-4 hours, no problem. So it's
That's
like
like
it really
I
shows
I
regular
like to
people.
say that he's like a nerd slash jock slash hippie, just like me.
Yeah, man, it's like it's crazy the combination of different things that he is. It really, on the Pangburn, is that how you say it? Pangburn Facebook
Yeah,
page. They always post these questions, just basic questions like, "Oh, what is the most valuable thing for this?" And who is the greatest hero in human history? And when they ask that one, the greatest hero in human history, I mean, it's so impossible to actually pick just one person. But I put Joe Rogan. I wanted to see the reaction that it would get, and I also partially believe that, like, in our modern time, maybe Joe Rogan isn't the most intelligent human being. He's not a doctor. He doesn't
yeah,
really have any credentials or anything. But there's a reason all these smart people want to talk to him. And he found a way to be an average Joe, but also get important messages across. And to have all that and to influence so many people and also show that, I can live like a fucking cool life at the same time. I don't have to be like solely dedicated to being like a nerd and just being weird and never having like a casual conversation. He just kind of like brings it all together and shows regular people that, it's cool to be smart and it's cool to think about stuff.
yeah.
And yeah, I think it's fucking, he's one of my biggest idols for sure. A lot of people don't know that about him. So, I talk about him all the time and kind of people just kind of like scoff, like, it's just the UFC commentator, or he's just a fucking comedian or whatever. But it's like,
Yeah,
no, you got to listen to some of his stuff. Like, he's a
yeah.
smart dude.
He's a he's a martial artist. He's a UFC commentator. He's a comedian, but he's also a hunter and he's a podcaster. And he has like his conversations range from like just super fun bullshitting conversations with other comedians all the way to like he's literally I've found these fascinating too. Like he's literally had at least a handful of times really in-depth intellectual debates. Like there was this one about nutrition with I forget their names, but one guy was a paleo guy, I think, and another guy was a vegan, and then there was another one between between I think oh yeah, one was Lane Norton, and then Dr. Dominic D'Agostino, who's a big advocate of the ketogenic diet, and
Yes, I remember
there
that one.
were there was a debate with Graham Hancock and Michael Shermer, and I think one other guy about Graham Hancock's theory, basically that there have been advanced human ancient civilizations for perhaps thousands or even tens of thousands of years longer than archaeologists think. And in all of these debates, it's people throwing data and studies against each other. So they're really in-depth intellectual debates.
Yeah, and Joe Rogan challenges them all the time. And
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
seen so many times, like, Joe will challenge them in such a manner that they really don't have an answer. And it's like, when you get a scientist type person who's able to bring their decades of experience in their field and all this data and research and everything, and you can get a guy like Joe Rogan who will ask good questions, and they're like, well, I don't know. It's cool, man. It's cool to see.
yeah, yeah. It's awesome. Like you were saying, I like the way that he interviews people. He's he's just having conversations with people, and he can get into intelligent debates too, and he can, like, sometimes he'll agree with someone, but if he doesn't, he'll push back on them, and sometimes he'll like steel man the other side or play devil's advocate too and say, well, the people who disagree with you about this would say, and then they talk about that.
Yeah, and that's such an important thing to do, right? I mean, to be able to entertain both sides of an argument and not maybe not even hold a side or even have an opinion, just challenge both sides, because that might be sometimes the most effective way to come to a truth about something. Because oftentimes I think people are just way. I mean, you look at the 4 debates, or they called them discussions. They were definitely debates. Between Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson. And
Oh
it's
yeah.
like, you know, 2 incredibly intelligent human beings and 4 debates, all probably around 2 hours apiece. And there wasn't much moving going on either side.
Yeah,
You
they
know,
were
it's
talking
like,
past each other a lot.
yeah, and it was, they got a little, they made a little progress on some very detailed things, but and super interesting conversations to listen to. I mean, I've listened to all 4 of those debates so many times. Uh, but oftentimes, I think even when you're at that level of intelligence, your ego comes back. You
Oh
refuse
yeah.
to let go of your point, right? I mean, it's tough, and it's really hard to. That's why I like having friends and any sort of relationship that people will push back. I love being pushed back on, because I mean, it's hard to tell if you're sounding crazy or not if somebody doesn't challenge your ideas, right? So,
Oh yeah. And that's sort of related to ego too, right? Like when you feel that feeling you get when someone is challenging a view that you're really attached to, you can feel your ego just rebelling against it and having that angry instinct. And I, along with probably everyone else who has a pulse, definitely can't resist succumbing to that sometimes, especially if you're just like getting into stupid arguments with people online or something like that. But that's another thing that, like, basically mental discipline can help you with, to try to like suppress that ego response and try to be more open-minded about having a conversation with people about what specifically you're agreeing and disagreeing about, or and like asking someone why they believe what they do. And that's why if especially if you have that mindset, it can be really good to be around people who challenge you or who disagree with you, especially if like you can be friends with people who you might disagree with about a lot of stuff, but you can still understand each other well enough, and because you're friends with that person, you tolerate their disagreements much more easily.
right, yeah, I mean, there's a huge difference between disagreeing and hashing out a problem and fighting. And it so often just turns into a fight. People, I try really hard. People that I meet, I try my best to show them that I will always be critical and I will always be honest, and I expect the same in return. And it's never because I don't like you or because I want to hurt your feelings or because I want to offend you or anything like that. I mean, if I'm sitting here talking to somebody for 2 hours, it's probably because I want to hear what they have to say. But I'm also understanding that everything that they have to say is not going to be true. And I'm definitely understanding that everything that I'm going to say is also not going to be true. And it just needs to happen. Like every problem needs to be hashed out through conversation. And that's
Yeah.
why I like these long form discussions and debates, because you get some of the most intelligent minds of modern society talking about these super complicated ideas. And it's good because it shows people that Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson, who are disagreeing about a lot of stuff, they can go have dinner after and they can have a laugh and have a beer. and
Yeah,
everything's all good, and we
yeah,
don't need to bomb each other or punch each other or whatever.
yeah, yeah, totally. Like it's that is a really good thing too. And that like you were saying, that this sort of format, just long discussions with people is really helpful for that too. And I think I think another key aspect to it too is having like face-to-face discussions like this, especially when people are actually in the same presence in real life, or at least like virtually face-to-face like this, because you can see the way that people are reacting to stuff in the way that you don't if you're just communicating through audio, or especially the more common way that people communicate, which is just through some sort of text or on social media or something like that, because you don't get like the body language and the facial expressions and stuff like that when you're just doing that. And then if you're having the longer form discussions, it's much easier to take the time to figure out why both people believe what they do, and just just basically come to a point where you can find some common ground, or even if you're or you might even just be bullshitting about something that doesn't really need to be seriously debated, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Like, that's how deep I think our. Now, I'm not sure if you can call it ego. I always reference the ego because I think it's just such a crucial aspect in how we act and how we think. But I kind of lost my train of thought about it. But
That it's a crucial aspect of human beings, the ego.
yeah, I mean, how complicated it really is. I mean, sometimes we probably don't even realize that we're defending something that we're defending because we refuse to let that idea go because we don't want our character to be crushed. We don't want our, um, we don't want to seem weak or stupid or anything like that. And I think it can go so deep that we don't even realize we're doing it.
Oh yeah. Well, the like one in terms of that, one thing that I think Jordan Peterson has talked about this before too, but Jonathan Haidt in particular talks a lot about this. I'm a huge fan of his. He's a social psychologist, and I think particularly in his my favorite book of his called The Righteous Mind. He talks about in that book in one part he talks about how the reason that I think the subtitle of the book is Why People Are Divided by Politics and Religion. And he talks about how, particularly with politics and religion, we have what people in general, we have so much trouble um, admitting that we're wrong or being open to changing our mind in terms of those ideas, because they basically become a part of ourselves. They become a part of our psychology. We identify with those ideas as a part of us. So if you just to take a random example, if you stop believing in God, or if you start believing in God, or if you if you decide that there should be totally open borders for immigrants, or you change your mind and decide there should be totally closed borders for immigrants, it's like chopping a limb off if you get rid of that one belief or something like that. So it's like defending your arm from getting chopped off if someone is disagreeing with you about something in particular.
Right. Yeah. That's a better way of putting what I was trying to say for sure. Um, it's how do you say? It's like you said, it's like our identity. And even, I mean, a stupid example, but it's very real for me, and it feels the same. Like like I said, I haven't taken a day off from exercising in months. And today, when I was at the realization that I literally could not do anything, I immediately had this feeling of like I had lost something that I identify with. Like this fitness thing that I've been doing lately has become a part of me, and all of a sudden it's just taken away. And it's like you need to come to terms with that, and you need to you know realize that that one thing doesn't identify you. I think a healthy way, I don't think really anything identifies you. I mean, you're always changing, you're always learning, you're always growing. I think if you're not learning, you're not growing or progressing in some way, it doesn't have to be your career, it doesn't have to be financially, it can be anything. But
Like
I think if
learning
you're
a new
not
skill.
doing anything like in the forward direction, you might as well be dead. Because if you think you know everything you need to know, your life's basically over. You know what I mean? In a
Yeah, because
weird way.
like, what's the point of trying to accomplishing anything anymore if you feel like you've already accomplished everything, right?
Exactly. And there's
Yeah.
always something more to accomplish. There's always something more to learn. Like
And
always.
there's and also like this idea of the self, it's sort of a like it's sort of a it's interesting. It's sort of a human concept that there is a self. This is one
Mm.
thing I've been learning a lot more in the process of learning about philosophy too. Like there's and there have been similar criticisms before, but there's this classic philosopher, the Scottish philosopher named David Hume, who talks about the self and how what we identify as ourselves is it's hard to really pin down because even if you're just the average person or and you just work a job that you hate and then you come home and then you watch TV and then you go to bed, you're still like there like your psychological history is what changes you and things happen in your life that change you too. Like I was much smaller as a child than I am now, but I still probably, at least when I was old enough to understand the concept of the self, I still thought that I was a self. But and like you and me are both very different from when very different physically from when we were powerlifting and we were like huge jacked powerlifters too. And then with both of us too, our concept of ourselves has changed in terms of what we've been talking about of how our ideas have changed in terms of working out and in terms of religion and all those sorts of things. And the average, like basically every person is like that. You could say that there's a self, but it's hard to really know what it is. Like, is it your brain? Your brain is always changing too. So
Mm.
it's really interesting to think about.
It is. It's fun to think about because I mean, I'm sure you can relate to this. Um, when it comes to making decisions, like say you want to be disciplined, say you want to write a book or something like that, but you also have all these other things you want to do. You know, I want to go this party with my friend and I want to eat this cake, but you know, I'm trying to stay fit for the summer. And it's like you're always having these conversations in your head. It's like you have two or three or more people in your head telling you what you shouldn't do and what you should do. And it's like, which one of those people is you, and exactly where is you? Like,
Yeah.
where can you point to it? Like, it doesn't. It's really interesting to think about. Like,
Yeah.
which constant self is there? It doesn't. I can't really figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. Like the that's why the notion of the self, it's like it's it's like it's a useful thing to have because we're like without it in a sense why would we do certain things? But it also seems pretty clear that there isn't actually really what most people would identify as a self. It's like you could say, I guess the way I talk about this when I talk about it from a political perspective or from a sociological perspective is that we're all individuals within groups. And so it's not this extreme mindset one way or the other that like individualism, there are people who are especially politically all about the freedom of the individual, and the individual is what's the most important thing. I guess Jordan Peterson would be one person like that. And then there are the people on the complete opposite end of the spectrum who are totally collectivist, and they say we're all about a community and we're all in this together. But and then there are flaws with both of those, because like I said, we're individuals within groups. Even if you're the most staunch individualist possible, you probably are part of at least one group. Like maybe you have a family, maybe you have a circle of friends, maybe there are people you work with, even if you don't consider them friends. And then
Mm.
if you go too far the opposite direction, yeah, everyone is a part of a community, but they're distinct individuals within a community. And I think Jordan Peterson has said this before too, that the differences between individuals within certain groups is always greater than the difference between those two different groups. So if you're talking about like white people versus black people, or men versus women, or heterosexual people versus homosexual people, and you say these people are different from this other group of people in this way, in general, it doesn't even necessarily qualify as a statistically relevant comparison, because the differences between individuals within those different groups will be so different, because everyone's a person with different interests and different lives and different opinions on things, regardless of their skin color or gender or sexual orientation or anything like that.
Right. And yeah, you can't just look at somebody and I will bet you, yeah, I don't have very much money, but I'll bet you all of my money that you can't look at someone and know everything about them. And that alone is proof enough that, I don't like anything group related, because I just seriously think that, well, I mean, this is true. Every individual is unique. So how can you possibly, what's the point of even having groups? Like, what is the fucking point? It, it must accomplish something, I guess, maybe, within like a societal structure, or the functionality of systems in some way. But I mean, these broad groups like, transgenders or something like that, like, to be like, how can you possibly say that all of somebody in a group are even close enough to be in the same group just because they have a fucking dick, or they
Yeah,
don't, or they're black, or they're gay, or whatever? It's just fucking
it's like
stupid.
it's like how people got mad at Caitlyn Jenner when she said she was a Republican, because you're not on the right political team for being a transgender person. But
Yeah.
like but there are that well, I guess in a slightly different sense of the way we're talking about it, groups in general do serve functions too. Like even in the within the perspective of religion, Jordan Peterson and Jonathan Haidt also talk about this too. Although I'm not sure whether Jonathan Haidt and Jordan Peterson agree about this actually, but Jonathan Haidt also talks specifically about this idea of group selection, which has been challenged but much more accepted and thoroughly researched in recent years. It's basically the idea that ideas can evolve in a mass way across society, which might mom, sorry, my mom's talking in the background,
It's
but
okay.
so yeah, the idea is that religion evolved to be selected for by human societies, because it was an efficient way of organizing people and getting them to follow rules that would make sense to help cultures thrive. So it's the idea that one idea can evolve among a lot of different people, instead of like this idea. It's sort of this idea of cultural evolution in a way, like cultures can evolve, which contests the opinion before that, that evolution could only occur among an individual, and then if those adaptations are useful, then they're selected for by the rest of the group. So that's why it's used as a way to explain religion, for example, and that's why religions have existed across human societies for such a long time.
Yeah. Well, it's they obviously, there's no system that's perfect. And, even if we had completely different systems, those would be imperfect. Even if everyone was just an individual and there was no such thing as groups, that would also be imperfect. I don't think there is anything that's perfect. Um, it's just nothing is ever going to be perfect. But I do know that there are bad ideas and there are better ideas. And that's kind of what direction we should be heading in, is like what's clearly a bad idea, what's clearly a better idea. I still think we're dealing with a lot of bad ideas.
Yeah, totally. I agree. Like there are bad ideas and good ideas, and I like to use that more subtle distinction that you said. There are better ideas and worse ideas, because
Right.
sometimes, a lot of the times when people say that something is a bad idea, it seems to me like it's often their biased opinion when they say that, or when they say it's a good idea. But then again, I think particularly when people are talking about good ideas, often that might be more accurate, because there are a lot of different types of good ideas that would work for some people. Like it reminds me of working out, that we were talking about, like um, maybe becoming a marathon runner is a good idea for some people. Maybe for other people, it's a better idea to do like CrossFit or something. Maybe for another person, it's a good idea to do weightlifting. Maybe for another person, it's yoga. Maybe it's a variety of different things for another person. It's like whether something is a good or a bad idea, it depends on whether we're talking about one person, or whether we're talking about a mass society, and
Right.
which cultures we're talking about, or something like that. Like,
Right.
um,
Yeah, there's so many
like
variables involved, right? It's just
yeah, yeah,
impossible to have. It's never going to be like we can have like a universal system that works for everything and everyone. There's just so many variables. It depends on. Like, we'll take something as simple as, like you said, working out. Like if you're, I mean, first of all, to have the same standards, I think we'll take powerlifting for instance, because you and I are both familiar with the rules of how powerlifting works. To have the same standards for everyone, to bench press and the bar must touch the chest and then go all the way up. And then the same with the squat. Your hips must be below your knee. It's just like everyone has the same standard, but everybody's body is different. So how is that going to work? You know what I mean? There's going to be advantages, there's going to be disadvantages, there's going to be people that have different leverages, and there's so many variables involved. And this is only about something that's so basic, like weightlifting. Now imagine
oh yeah,
trying to implement a system that is fair for everybody within a society where there are well, I shouldn't say a society of 7 billion people, but a planet with 7 billion people. And we're trying to like make up some universal system that's supposed to work for everybody. It's like, nah, things have to be different depending on where, depending on uh, like the goals that people have, and the individuality of people, and everybody has different skills and abilities, and it's crazy. It's overwhelming for me to try and even begin to come up with an answer of how people are supposed to operate in trying to achieve some sort of optimal life. Like, there's just too many variables. Like, I know for myself maybe how I could, and I don't even know that. I can, like Jordan Peterson says, like if you can't even organize your own life, how the hell are you supposed to organize anything else? Like, I'm still trying to figure out my own shit, and I will never. It's not like there's some sort of like finish line to my life or something where I get to a point and I've learned everything that there is to learn, and I know how to do everything and solve every problem. It's like, people can't even put their own lives together. So how the hell are we supposed to come up with systems that work universally for so many people?
yeah, yeah, for sure. And like that's another key thing. That's another key thing too. Like, and like in you can look at it as enlightening in a way too, like that we're never going to actually have everything figured out. But I mean, if we had everything figured out, the world would be boring. Like people would say, "Yeah, I know what to do. This is what you do. Okay, this is what you're doing." But like even like we were talking about earlier, even the average person who who perhaps doesn't really do that much, or they just spend their time working and watching TV and like spending with their time with their family or something like that. They're always changing subtly too. Like maybe I'm watching this new show, maybe it's different from this other show. Maybe I'm going to start watching this other sport or something like that, or maybe something changed physically about me and I need to adapt to that. And it's like if you're if you have something figured out, the more I'm sure you're aware of this too and have experienced this too, but the more you kind of get interested in different things and challenge yourself in different ways, the more it kind of humbles you and makes you realize like, oh, I could totally be totally wrong about this because I've been so wrong about similar things before, and I've totally flipped on some things or had much more neutral positions on some things. So if I really think I have it figured out, I think I should maybe think more carefully about that.
Yeah, if there's one thing I know for sure, I'm not very smart, but if there's one thing I know, is that nobody knows what the fuck they're doing.
Yes.
Nobody has their shit figured out, and
Yeah.
nobody ever will. And if
Yeah.
we ever did, like you said, life would be boring. Like we're biologically designed, and I use designed not in the way that
Not in a
religious
creative
people would
way.
use,
Yeah.
but the way that we are. I mean, that's how we function. We function by having to navigate through problems, figure things out, get to the next step. Like that's how we work. And if we didn't have to do that, I don't even want to know what that would look like. I mean, you can look at people who are working dead end jobs, 9 to 5, who have absolutely no purpose in life, and multiply that by like 100. And then maybe that's what that would look like if we never had to like, throw your stuff out. And that'd be an
Yeah.
ugly world to live in,
That sounds awful.
right?
Like we just basically become mindless automatons and like more machine than human or something like that.
Which ironically sounds like that's the direction we're heading in,
Yeah,
apparently.
yeah, it does sometimes, right?
But I mean, I think that would be fun. The AI thing is wow. I mean, we just open up a door into AI.
Yeah, that would be cool, man. And that's so interesting to think about, like all the different directions that could go, because that's another subject where people have really polarized opinions about it. Like I think I wrote a blog about this a while ago. It's like the Skynet the Skynet narrative versus the singularity narrative. So like they're like the Skynet narrative is that's almost sort of self-explanatory. Like and a lot of people share this. Like Sam Harris is one of them too. Like the AI is going to be invented and it's basically going to destroy everything because it's inevitable because we're not going to be able to control it. And then there's the polar opposite narrative too, the singularity mindset, where we're going to see the emergence of AI and it's going to fix it, and it's going to fix everything and fix the world and evolve us onto a higher plane of existence or something like that. And I think like from the few people I've talked to who are coders and stuff like that, they seem to think that the doomsday scenario basically is at least very unlikely, but they also seem to think that the singularity perspective is perhaps possible, but probably not as quickly as some people think, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, everything I know about AI has um, pretty much everything I utter about AI has come from somebody else's lips. So I don't want to pretend like my ideas are original or I'm saying anything that I thought of
Oh, me too.
But to me, it seems like the doomsday scenario would be more likely. But I'm definitely not the one to have any sort of opinion that should be considered at all. But I trust people. The people that I listen to, I trust, and that's the reason I listen to them, because I realize that they've spent a lot more time than me looking into these things. So it's kind of what I turn to when I'm not sure about something. Sam Harris lays out a pretty good argument for AI, and it's
Yeah.
kind of terrifying. And Elon Musk, I'm sure you saw that podcast on Joe Rogan. Like they
Oh
had a
yeah.
clip of him talking, and it was like the most terrifying thing. And even Rogan said it while Elon was saying it. It's like he had this stone cold look on his face, like it was the end of the world. And I think he said something like, I tried to warn them. I tried to get them to
Yeah.
stop.
Did
And they
you see
wouldn't
that?
listen.
Did you see that short, like, funny compilation video that or clip video that someone did of that um, with like really serious, intense music going on and like zooming in on him, and it's
I didn't see that one. No,
no, it's it's funny. Um,
there's so many clips out there.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, even there's I think the book and the philosopher who Sam Harris bases his ideas about AI on, or is this book Super Intelligence by Nick Bostrom, and that's a really fascinating book. I remember I read that a few years ago, and then if you compare something like that to something by someone like Ray Kurzweil. Ray Kurzweil was written. I think he wrote "The Singularity Is Near." It's like totally the opposite perspective. So it's interesting to compare those. And I don't know. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm sure as fuck not an expert on this too, but based on what I've learned from the opposite perspective, and based on people I know who work in tech, who are coders, or I've talked to a few times to a guy I know who literally is working on neural implants, which is so fascinating. Um, but I think that I kind of am slightly more leaning towards the optimistic outcome than the pessimistic outcome. But I think that's also much more difficult to achieve than some people think it's going to be. But I also think that the negative mindset can be good in a way, because that's probably why Elon Musk is doing things to try to solve this problem. Like I think he's doing that thing I think it's called Neuralink, where he's
Mhm.
trying to like he was talking about this on that Joe Rogan podcast. He's trying to basically create a sinner, that's the word I'm looking for, like a symbiotic system between humans and machines, which is already sort of happening in a way with our phones. It's just that's going to be in our heads, and it's like that narrative there that Joe Rogan talks about all the time. It's like he says humans are the cocoon that is going to give birth to the butterfly. Then
Right.
I think that Elon Musk looks at that as ideally that's going to be some sort of like humans are going to become cyborgs basically.
Yeah. Well, people like to think that, like we're the most important species on the planet or whatever, or like we're here forever and like we're the last, step in evolution or something like that. Something, people have all sorts of ideas on what we are, and it's obviously not that I'm educated, but those types of opinions are so uneducated, it's disgusting. But yeah, I mean, that's a great analogy what Joe Rogan said. I mean, we're not going to be around forever like this, and in the direction that we're going with technology, I mean, it's to me it just seems inevitable that something is going to happen. I don't want to declare like I know exactly what it's going to be, because I really have no fucking idea, because I'm not that fucking smart when it comes to this stuff. But something is going to happen, and something is going to happen that we don't expect and that we cannot react to, I think, whether it is going to be apocalyptic or who knows? I mean, but something unexpected, I think, is going to happen.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I think it is going to be probably something at least relatively unexpected, whether it's positive or negative. And my dog wants to join the podcast. Apparently, this is Dexter.
What's your dog's name? Dexter.
I wish we had named him after my favorite serial killer, but he actually had that name when we got him from the SPCA.
Nice. I used to have a dog named. Well, I had two dogs. One was named Zoe, and the other one was named Glenn. I like giving human names to dogs.
That Glenn is a good name in particular.
Yeah, he was a white shepherd. He was a pussy.
Oh,
biggest pussy ever. I just look at him and he'd pee on the floor.
Yeah. So do you not have them anymore?
No, I got rid of them. I found good homes for them. I sent Zoe to a farm in southern Alberta, and I sent Glenn back to the breeder, and the breeder found a good home. It was all part of my downsizing project, getting rid of things that were holding me back from becoming who I could be. And as much of an emotional attachment I had to those dogs, it was something that was extremely hard to do, but extremely necessary to do in order for me to, get past a hard spot in my life.
Okay. So what are you doing for work instead of your other job? You were doing power engineering, right?
I was a process operator. I never actually got my power engineering degree because the part of the plant that I worked in didn't require that ticket. So I originally started in mine operations. I was a heavy equipment operator. I also trained people in the simulator and stuff like that. And about a year and a half into that, I saw some internal postings and I applied for, I think, 7 different plant ops jobs. And I got one, and I did that for almost 7 years. And I never really liked it. It was a good job. Most people from where we live, like, that's the dream job. You know what I mean? Like, everybody wants to have that.
Well, you can make lots of money. That's all you need in your job, apparently.
Yeah, that's all you need in life is money and the miserable, unending feeling of lack of purpose. That sounds like a great idea.
Oh yeah, exactly. Especially if
you know what? I can't say everything bad about it because a lot of people actually do somehow find a purpose in it. I cannot relate to that whatsoever.
Right.
Different strokes for different folks, right? I don't want to talk down to those people that do end up enjoying that career path. And there's a lot of good people out there. I met a lot of good people out there, but it was not for me, and I probably will never go out there.
Right. Yeah, I feel like I would probably have the same experience if I did that or something similar. That's why I've never really had much of an interest in getting one of those jobs on site, because I just obviously I haven't actually tried it, but just the idea of having, for one thing, having these fucking incredibly long ass shifts, and it sounds like the work itself is probably like really hard, but also monotonous and boring. And it sounds like, from what you described, it sounds like the sort of soul crushing thing that I think it would be for someone like me too. I think maybe if you're like maybe that's sort of the case if you're more of like an if you're more of an introspective person or something like that. Maybe that's more annoying for if you think that way. What do you think about that?
I think you would not like it. I think, honestly, I think not very many people actually like it. It's weird. Like, it's like I've been trying to figure this out for a long time because I've had a lot of conversations with people. I work out at the Keanu gym, and that's where all these power engineers go to get their power engineering degree. And so they get a free gym membership. I run into people almost daily that are power engineers or are currently studying to to go be a power engineer. And I have conversations with them. I don't try to attack them or anything, but I almost warn them because it's weird. Once you get into a position like that, they give you money. Like nobody should make that much money
Yeah.
doing.
Like how much is it?
It's stupid, man. Like I made over $200,000 a year for like 8 years.
Yeah.
And like, not that we didn't do anything, but it's just like it doesn't really require you to be anything special at all. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And the worst, like, hey, I'll never turn down money for doing easy work, but the worst thing is that like if you're the type of person who's developing in life and you're trying to find your way and you get caught up in um, trying to be a member of society that uh, like the average person looks up to, then you can find yourself in a real bad situation because you start making all this money and it gets to your head and you get bored because it's almost like that job becomes your identity. And then when you get bored, you start buying stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I bet.
That's what happened to like a lot of people. And these are the kinds of things that I warn people about because once you start buying stuff, because you can pretty much buy anything, you know, I definitely do not. I'm not the type of person to brag about money or anything, but I'm just going to lay out some numbers so people get a real idea of like what it's actually like. Like it's nothing to go buy $100,000 truck and a $700,000 house at the age of 22. It's nothing. It's what everybody does.
Yeah.
The problem is, as you and a lot of young people get into these jobs, and not so much just young as in a number like an age, but young in the development of their character. And when you get bored, you start buying all this stuff, and then that becomes your identity. And then all of a sudden, a lot of people get to a point where they start to mature a lot more, and they start to really understand themselves and what they value. Um, and maybe I'm completely batshit crazy. I don't think I am because this happened to me, and I watched it happen to a lot of people.
No, the um until the I think the age 25 on average, your prefrontal cortex has not fully developed, which is like supposedly the center for like logical and rational and reasonable thinking. And so I think like that can be a large role to that too, if that seems to be the case.
Yeah, I mean that probably definitely played a lot into it for me. But I find even people who are just getting into this career, even when they're like 30 or something, like they lived a certain way until they were in their late 20s, and then they decided that they didn't have the house they wanted, or they weren't making enough money to feel a certain way about themselves or to place themselves in society where they would like to be. So they turn to something like this, and they want to start making more money. And it's just the worst because if you get to that point where you start to really understand more and more about yourself, we'll call it wokeness. I'm not sure how many people, but you can be fucked because now all of a sudden you have all these fucking bills and you can't escape from it. You can't get out of it. Your only option is to continue working and to continue essentially wasting your life if you get to that point. And there's no way out.
Yeah, it
And
becomes
it's
like
just
a
like,
trap like that, hey?
oh, it's so shitty. It's the worst. And yeah, it started really to get to me. And I just quit. What is it now? I just quit a couple weeks ago. Finally.
Oh, I
It's
didn't
something that was
realize
building up.
I didn't realize you did it that recently. Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was on disability for the longest time. I was really battling um, with a lot of problems psychologically, trying to figure my life out and find my way in life, and I was struggling. And when it came time to have to make the decision to go back to this job that hands you money like you would never expect to get having no education, or quitting and throwing yourself out into the free world and trying to make it. Um, for a lot of people, the choice would be easy. Like, sure, I'll go make the money and it'll be easy. It's an easy job. It's a great job, good benefits, blah, blah, blah. But I couldn't do it. I couldn't fucking do it. I refused. And it was hard. It was a hard time for me to get through. But I think it was the right choice. And I'm happy that I did what I did.
That's good, man. It's interesting what you were saying about how how you kind of get trapped in that world. Like I can imagine that, like making so much like you were saying, making so much money that you kind of get you identify with that career, your profession, and then when you get unhappy, you start buying things, and like you said, you get caught up in all these bills from just buying things with the idea of making yourself happy. So you have to keep this job that you hate making all of this money so you can keep up with buying all of these things that you think will make you happy but don't actually make you happy.
Yeah, and it gets even worse than that. You have to keep working this job to pay for all these things that now you know aren't making you happy.
Yeah.
So it's like, fuck, nothing that I even have is making me happy anymore, and I can't even get rid of it. I still have to keep making myself miserable, getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning and going to work a job I fucking hate to pay for all this shit that I hate. It's like hell. It's like, if I can think of hell, that's the closest to hell that I've ever been.
Yeah. So was it like a gradual process that that sort of led to you questioning it this much, or was there some sort of moment of realization or a linchpin? And did you it sounds like you had sort of a plan for how to get out of this. So like how did that work?
It was definitely a gradual thing. Like, over time, I started to learn more about myself. A couple of failed relationships. All the hard things in life that people face that um, allow them to learn more about themselves. And I had the same job throughout the whole time, and it was kind of like a common factor. It was like this thing that was always there that I never really considered was part of the problem. And then probably about 3 years ago, I would say, it started to really click for me. Like, I don't like any of this stuff that I'm doing. It's not giving me any meaning. Like, for me personally, like, I need to be doing something that matters. And that is obviously a subjective thing. Like, what matters? You can make an argument that oil matters, I guess, but
Yeah, that's
not
true.
not individually. You know what I mean? Like, it's not
Yeah.
fulfilling. Turning valves to me is not fulfilling. It doesn't fulfill like my inner spirit, I guess you can call it. So it's just started weighing on me. And at that time, when I first started to realize all this, like, there was absolutely no way I could get out. I was way too deep in bills. There was no way out. And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And a couple things happened, like the few people that I worked with that I actually respected we started to separate somehow. Crew changes, and this person was transferring here and this person was transferring there. And eventually it got to the point where, like, now I don't even not only hate the job, but now I'm not even working with people that I like. So it's just like, there's absolutely nothing good about this. So eventually it was just too much for me to bear. And it got to me psychologically, like emotionally, it got to me. And I had to do something. And it all started in December of 2018. And yeah, haven't looked back since. I haven't been back there since.
That's good, man. So what do you, well, like so you said you've done a whole bunch of downsizing, right? And you sold your house and everything. So are you living in a smaller place now? And are you planning on doing something different for the future? Or it sounds like maybe you have a lot of money saved up and you could take some time to figure it out. I don't know.
Um, Give me 2 seconds, Andrew. I got to piss because I want to answer this question properly because that's a good question.
Okay.
Sorry, man. I'll be as fast as I possibly can.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Yeah, this is something that happens to a lot of us, right? Happening or changing this much. Like both of us have changed in terms of powerlifting and that sort of thing too. And both of our views on atheism have changed a little bit as well. And then I have a different job now too, like I was talking about, working for a moving company and helping tutor people too, which are not those sort of high paying jobs like that. And yeah, it sounds
Right.
like
That's so cool. Like I've always admired um, people who enjoy teaching people, whatever it may be, whether it's like with school or if you're like an instructor or you just generally like helping people. I mean, I don't think there's a greater uh, thing that somebody can do. You know what I mean? Because like too many people spend way too much time focused on themselves. You know what I mean? Like their image, and they'll spend all day obsessing about their image and how they look and what people think of them and stuff like that. And I think it's just so toxic.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, man. I mean, I'm so glad that I figured that out about myself. I actually got into that because again from mixed mental arts. It's based on a podcast actually with Brian Callen, who's a comedian, and Hunter Mott's his co-host, who I've actually talked to him once on my podcast before and on some of the mixed mental arts chats that we do. He is a tutor also, and I sort of was inspired by him because he's a tutor, and I also it was that in combination with the fact that when I went back to school a few years ago, just for a semester, but I haven't been back since then. I did a semester studying journalism, and I noticed that now that I'm actually interested in learning, that when I went back to school this time, it was so different from when I was in school as a kid because I was actually interested and I was asking the teacher questions and like even debating with them in class and stuff like that. So other
Mhm.
students had this like got this impression of me that, oh, this guy's really smart. So they were asking me for help and stuff like that. And that made me think, in combination with what I was thinking about in terms of Hunter Mott's, hey, maybe I could do this too. So I eventually, luckily, finally was able to get some students. And now I like doing it because it has that, like, it's the good thing that I like about it is that I'm actually helping someone. Like I'm doing something useful, which, like I said earlier, that makes me feel good and makes me have this sense of fulfillment about myself when I'm doing that.
Yeah. And I couldn't agree more. You know, I think that seriously is one of the most important things that people can do is to care about their fellow human being. And that's a very general way of putting it.
Yeah,
And maybe that's one of the answers, I guess, for a lot of life's problems. But
yeah,
it's hard though to come to that conclusion. Like I was faced with so much anger and hatred and resentment for so many things. So many people. Like I never understood why. And once I started downsizing, like I started getting rid of things that I didn't fucking care about. I didn't want two vehicles. I didn't want a truck. I didn't want toys. I didn't want guns. I didn't want all this fucking shit that I thought was making me happy. And once I was able to get rid of all of these things, like, and something happened to me. Like, I started really just understanding basic human values, and um, it's pretty universal, I think, for most people that are like truly happy and truly have come to some sort of like enlightenment about what life is. Most people like helping other people, and nobody that's angry, or sorry, nobody that's happy in life or satisfied or fulfilled uh, wants anything bad for other people. You only want good things.
Exactly.
So when there's so many people that are living miserable lives, trying to, work two jobs to make ends meet, or working a 9 to 5 that they don't fucking like, they're just filled with all this resentment for everything, and they don't understand why, and they can't get past it. And it's just like the ripple effect, like it spreads. But I also think that the other end of it, when you come to terms with general things that human beings should value, you get that same ripple effect when you start spreading it, and that can mean helping other people. That can mean, just conversations like this where you get to, get together with an old friend and talk about awesome stuff, and it's just nothing but good feelings for me. And it's a shame that more people can't realize how simple and basic something like that is, and how valuable it can be.
Yeah, for sure. And it can be, well, like you were describing, that ripple effect, especially in our culture, and especially here in Fort McMurray. There's basically just that encouragement of that materialistic mindset. Like, what you should do in life is make money. So I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, even though I hate the majority of my life, because I'm spending so much of my time doing this thing that I hate. And then when you when you can let go of those things that are bringing you down, like you were saying, then you can have this more positive mindset, especially if you're doing something that is helping someone. And I think you're right. At least for the most part, there are probably some exceptions. Most people, at least it seems to me, that most people who are truly happy and not just pretending, like there are a lot of egotistical people who pretend to be happy, but deep down inside they're probably not. But the people who seem to be genuinely that way, most of them often seem to enjoy like helping out other people, helping their friends, maybe if they're less successful than them, or just being charitable or helping them in any way. Like, that's what's so great. Like, I try to be that way with people. And it's I don't believe in karma or any shit like that, but it's like, if you put that out and you try to be with people, it just makes sense that that'll come back to you more, because you're putting more effort into being that way, and people are noticing that about you, and then appreciate you being that way with them, and then it sort of inspires them to be that way too. It's like how you can inspire each other. Like, even I was thinking earlier, like in this conversation, I feel like you having a more having a more neutral mindset and being more humble about what you know and what you don't know. Even though I try to be that way generally, it sort of encouraged me just in this conversation to try to consciously be that way as much as possible too.
Well, that's really awesome, man. Like, I love hearing that. Like, if there is one thing that I could do for the rest of my life and give up everything else in life that I enjoy, besides like eating and shit. I don't want to die, but like that would be it. That would be spreading what I believe to be authentic, and what I believe to be pure, and what I believe to be true, and getting to witness the positive effect that comes from me being able to share that with people. it really helps me so much. Like, and that's why I post my fitness stuff on social media. I don't like to brag. I don't like to boast. You know, there's too much of that shit. You know, I don't like to flex and show people what I have and all that sort of stuff. I like to inspire people. Um, it really makes me feel fulfilled being able to inspire people, even in the most minuscule way. Like even if it's just a friendly hello and a smile to somebody who typically might treat you badly, or a compliment, or you know, hearing that from you, like somebody who's done 100 podcasts and talked to uh, people way more intelligent than I would consider myself to be, and
And
for you to say that, um, you know, that you took something out of this conversation that came from me, it means a lot to me, because like I feel like I'm being as authentic as I can. Like I try my best to not just talk to sound smart. Like I really am, as lame as it may sound, I'm speaking from my heart, as honestly as I think that I can. So that's really cool.
that's great, man. Thanks a lot. And yeah, I appreciate that too. I and one thing I've noticed about you too is in the way that we're talking, is that it seems like you're much more open-minded and introspective and really down to earth um than the way I remembered you were before. Not that you were like awful in the complete opposite direction. I think we didn't really hang out that much when we were doing powerlifting, and I think we were both kind of more simple-minded in that way. And I think
Mm.
it seems to me like perhaps one of the things that's changed about you in this another one that's similar for me is that I'm way more comfortable with being honest about expressing my feelings like you just did, like you said, like speaking from the heart, because that's another part of this sort of stereotypical like male mindset that probably both of us used to have about powerlifting, of just being like a tough guy and anger is the only emotion you should express.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's so true, man. Like I let go of it all. Like I really let go of caring what people think, because I can be authentic and as open as I want to be. And the only people that are going to uh, react in a way that matters are the people that, um, like yourself, people who are similar mindset about stuff. And that's really all that matters. Like it's hard at first to start changing the way that you are, because you know, oftentimes we try and do things to get respect from, you know, especially when we're younger. You know, we're trying to impress girls, and we're trying to get certain girls to like us, and
Yeah,
maybe a girl is talking to us that we think is like, you know, a little bit out of our league or whatever. So we shift and we try and change the way that we're saying stuff and the way that we act to try and get that, because we place ourselves in in a lower status than they are. So we're trying to attain this higher status individual because we think that it matters. But you know, I think that's why so many relationships fail, because the honesty and authenticity is not there. If you can really just be, even if what you're being authentic about is considered to be absolutely ridiculous by 99% of people, it's so much more empowering to be able to still be authentic and communicate only with maybe those 1% of people that don't think you're whatever they think they are.
yeah,
It's so much easier when you can just accept how you are, and you're not afraid of anything, because you've already accepted the fact that all these people that you used to try to get to respect you, they don't, not that they are less valuable than you, they're just, I just consider them different. you know, I'm not the same as them, and um, I don't want to try and impress them or get their respect, because that's not who I want to be. It's not who I want to associate with. So once you can get over that fear of, and obviously I'm just speaking from personal experience. It's not like everybody thinks like this, but once you can get over that fear of rejection and being considered um, anything by anyone, and you're just literally as authentic as you can possibly be all the time, it's life just gets so much cooler and more interesting.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree, man. Like the that's a yet another way that we're similar, I would say, because like I remember growing up and in high school and stuff like that. I so regret the way I used to be so obsessed with conformity, especially when I was a kid growing up. Like I wouldn't admit being interested in nerdy things or something like that, or I wouldn't deliberately wouldn't try to learn things because I thought learning isn't cool. Why would you want to learn stuff? Or
Mm-hmm.
I would like pretend to not be into stuff because people at school would think that's not cool. Or like that thing you were talking about too with trying to impress girls and being and feeling like you're so out of they're so out of your league that you're just trying to change yourself to please them. And it's like both when those things change and you can try to just be your authentic self and not give a fuck about what people think, as long as people don't think you're being like a terrible asshole or something like that. That's usually a
Right.
signal. But if you can just be your genuine self and try to be honest about your beliefs and what interests you and stuff like that, then people like I don't want to say this in like an egotistical way, but it seems like that sort of draws people to you and makes me be drawn to different people than I would used to be drawn to. And it's like people appreciate you being a genuine person, and if you're and it makes you an interesting person. And also like so I feel like you can have better and more meaningful relationships with people in that way. Like you can have more lasting friendships because you have a deeper connection. And I've noticed that thing with girls too. Like I've noticed that since I've gotten older, I used to be fucking terrible with women, and now I'm I'm much better than I used to be because I'm my genuine self. I'm not just trying to impress girls when I talk to them. I'm like like I just try to literally be my genuine self. And it's like because I'm not tripping all over myself, which I've done in the past, and it's probably made me seem like pathetic and desperate and stuff like that. It's like
Mm-hmm.
women seem to appreciate that more because they at least the women who you want to be with the most, I would say, they appreciate you being a genuine person because there's so much fakery going on everywhere.
Yeah. No, that's 100% right, man. Like, yeah, you pretty much nailed it. I mean, life is just so much better. Like, it's amazing. And it's weird. You hear people say cliche things like this all the time, but it's like
Yeah.
it's fucking true, man. And I've done so many things in life now that I realize that the reason I ended up unhappy, um, or unfulfilled in a certain situation was because I just wasn't following my heart. And as stupid as that sounds, like I wasn't following my heart with my career. I wasn't following my heart with purchases that I was making and things that I was accumulating. And I wasn't following my heart with relationships. And they all ended poorly, all of them. Because you get to a certain point where it's like, okay, you get the girl that's two notches above your league if there was some measurable way of, determining who's more valuable or whatever. But you're going to end up unhappy because the very process in which you got to where you got was never authentic in the first place. It was just a lie. And I think we lie to ourselves daily, for sure. And the more you start to realize that, the more you start to catch yourself, and the better path that I think you'll put yourself on. And it really just doesn't, it starts not to matter at all about anything. You know, I don't care about money. I don't care about where people perceive me to be in this, in with any sort of status or anything like that. I'm just literally, as again, as stupid as it sounds, I'm literally just being authentic. And it's there's nothing that I've ever felt in my life that's more freeing than that.
Yeah. And it's like that's like trying to be that way, like another way that can lead to positive results too is that since I try to be a genuine person, and part of that is that I'm interested in so many different topics, so it makes so many different types of people okay with like really open to talking with me about a wide variety of subjects. And so it's like I'm learning so much from having these conversations with people and them expressing their genuine beliefs. And then it's like people are more open-minded to talking to you, even if they disagree with you, if you if you just try to be honest about the way you're being without trying to disparage the other side. Like I was talking, this is another topic I was talking about yesterday in that podcast that I did. We were talking about, when we were talking about politics at one point, I was saying that since I try to I agree and disagree with a lot of different political perspectives, and I can explain why, it makes people all over the political spectrum interested in talking with me, because I probably agree with them about some ideas but disagree with them about other ideas. And I don't need to care about what other people think about that, because most people, the vast majority of people, think I'm a reasonable person. It's only people who are really extremely far right or really extremely far left who who have a huge problem with my political opinions.
Right. Well, yeah, those people have a problem with everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true, man. It's you said something a couple minutes ago that I forget what it was, but it really resonated with me. What were you talking about in your progression to the end of that?
I was talking about how trying to be genuine and expressing my interest and being interested in a lot of different topics has resulted in a lot of different people being okay with talking to me about a wide variety of subjects, like on my podcast and stuff like that.
Right. Right. Yeah. So that struck with me because it's like, this is why I'm so confident in this way of living, because like what you just said there is so true. And if more people could just somehow get to this point where they're just being, you know, as ridiculous as it sounds, because we were talking about the self earlier, but if they could just be themselves, um, there would be so much less drama and so much less problem in the world. You know what I mean? Because a huge part of um, problems with, you know, politically or within individual relationships is just communication. It's a lack of understanding of perception, because people suck at communicating. They fucking suck. They don't know how to express themselves. They don't know how to articulate their thoughts. So you can take like somebody who has an opinion about something who isn't able to really express it that well, and it gets oversimplified, and people kind of create a story in their own head of what it means. But like, it's like, imagine if everybody, like this Neuralink thing, imagine if you could right now read exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Like you know what I mean? If I could read exactly what you were thinking, I would be fascinated. I would get so much smarter because I could know everything that you know, everything that you think. And the only way that we can possibly achieve that right now is by communicating. So the shittier people are at communicating, the less understanding we have about each other and our intentions. 'Cause I don't think that people's intentions are bad. I
Oh,
think
for
that,
sure. Yeah,
it's like,
that's a pet peeve of mine too. Like a lot of people who like who I disagree with about certain ideas, people who I talk to who also have those same disagreements with me, it often seems like their disagreements get so carried away to the point that they start thinking or saying this person has bad intentions. This their position on this, that, or the other thing is so fucking incredibly dumb that I can't believe they genuinely have that opinion. They have to have bad intentions because I cannot possibly believe that someone is that dumb.
right,
I always think I always try to practice Hanlon's razor, which is it's basically do not attribute to malice that which can be attributed to ignorance, because sometimes people definitely do have bad intentions or even secret bad intentions, but the vast majority of the time, people do have good intentions. They might even have the same goals as you, but they're just going about it in an ineffective way using ineffective methods or something like that.
right. Yeah, well, Jordan Peterson, to reference him again, he talks a lot about a good man is someone who is dangerous but isn't, that doesn't act out the dangerous acts. You know what I mean? Somebody who's capable of evil and understands what evil is, but is good by choice.
Hmm.
Because, um, you need, like he says, you need to be able to understand the perception of somebody who has bad intentions in order to deal with those intentions properly. Because if you didn't, if you're totally ignorant to what bad people were trying to do or evil people were trying to do, then you'd forever be fucked over. If it wasn't for modern society, a lot of us would be dead because of these bad intentions. But I think the bad intentions all, not all, because it's never, nothing is ever 100%, but a lot of these bad intentions and uh, wishes for pain on others come from just a place of unhappiness within. And if more people can find that, and that's Jordan Peterson's goal, is to uh, for the individual to be able to fulfill that um, inner pain by finding meaning and purpose. And he believes that if everyone can do that some way or another, then you'll see malevolence just disappear.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean that's one aspect where I agree with Jordan Peterson on it in terms of how um, it it's so much more fulfilling for people to feel like they have some sense of purpose in life and some sort of highest value, and working toward that. Basically, it's in it makes sense too. It's almost similar to like an existentialist perspective, like Jordan Peterson talks about Nietzsche sometimes, who was an existentialist. It's sort of this response to nihilism, the this idea of, well, it's sort of similar to cynicism, that there is no reason or purpose or existence to life, but the existentialist answer would be, okay, so there's no meaning, so instead of being disheartened by that, you can look at that as enlightening, because it means you can choose any purpose in life that you want. You can choose any meaning. Like you could choose, for me, like I get a lot of meaning out of doing these podcasts with people and of like writing both fiction and nonfiction, and pursuing like physical improvement and developing better relationships with people, and trying to find some way to make a living where I don't have to have like a shitty job or something like that. And a lot of people can find meaning and purpose in so many other different types of ways. And if you're just like you've described in detail a few times, the like if you're just like this average like the person who works that 9 to 5 job or works on site or something, and you have a job that you hate, it's like you have no, a large part of that is probably because you feel like you have no purpose or control. Like you're going to work for this company and they're rewarding you with a lot of money so that, and it's like payment for your misery basically. Like here's a lot of money. It's okay if you feel miserable for your whole
Yeah.
career. You have this money instead.
Yeah. 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 It's I'm so glad that I was able to get out of that. And, we talked about the ripple effect, and it's like us having this conversation. I learn something every day, and I always note that I learn something every day because I think it's important to know that, to remember that. Um, and that ripple effect to me is just, it couldn't be any more obvious that that's true, because even if no one is watching this, which I'm sure there are people watching this, I don't know because I can't see what's going on because I just see this one screen in front of me. But I'll take this conversation, and it's been such a great conversation.
Yeah,
And
thanks, man. It has.
yeah, like I've really enjoyed this. We should definitely do this again.
Yeah, man. Fuck yeah.
Yeah, I would like that. But I can take something that I've learned from today, from the experiences that I've had today in this conversation. And now I know something I didn't know. And I can take that enthusiasm or that positivity or that knowledge or wisdom, and I can, the next 5 people I talk to are going to be influenced in some way by this conversation. And that's 5 extra people. And then they will be influenced possibly in some way, even if it was just something small. Like I complimented them because, I was feeling so happy that we were able to have such a good talk. And, it's just something as simple as that. Like that ripple effect is so real. And the more like personal you can get with people, and the more articulate you are with your thoughts and how you feel and what you believe to be true, the more you can get that across to as many people as possible. It's like the ripple effect just grows exponentially. And a lot of people think that if your podcast doesn't have 100,000 downloads or whatever, it's not doing anything. But this is, man, like this very conversation is changing things, and we might not be able to see it um, on paper, but it is. Like I really think that's true, because I'm the next however many people I talk to. I'm going to remember this conversation. I'm going to remember what I learned today, and I'm going to implement that into the way that I communicate with them. And it has to have some sort of effect, and it just keeps growing.
Well, thanks a lot, man. Yeah, I appreciate that. And yeah, you're right. Like for both of us, I always talk to my friends, and I send my friends and family members my podcasts all the time, and then I get into conversations with people like because I'm doing podcasts so often. When I'm hanging out with friends or something, I'll often say like, I was talking with this person on my podcast yesterday about this, and then it'll lead to a great conversation.
Right? Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
Well,
right.
we should probably go. This lasted a lot longer than I thought, but
Yeah. Yeah. It's
I
good.
didn't want to stop.
Yeah. Me neither, man. Well, yeah, we can end it here, and I'll just uh, I'll just say all the stuff I like to say at the end of my episodes, and then you can give any last words or plugs or anything there if you have any. Probably not, but um, yeah. That, and like you said, well, we should definitely do this again, man. That'll be fun. And so, yeah, like I always say at the end of my videos, thanks to everyone for watching another episode of the Mindgasms podcast. Hope you found this as interesting as I and I think also Channing did. And thanks so much to those of you who subscribe to my channel and to those of you who like and share this video, and especially to those of you who contribute to me on Patreon. I really appreciate that, and I'll add the link for my Patreon page in the description for this video like I always do. And like I always say, I love you all. Keep being the tiny beam of light that shines through the almost impenetrable darkness in the universe. And most importantly, always remember this: the funk cures all. All right. Keep having mindgasms, everyone. And any last words or anything there, Channing?
No, I just want to say it was really cool doing my first podcast. I hope to do it again. You will get another Patreon subscriber, however you say it, right after I close this window. And yeah, hopefully we can do it again soon, man. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks a lot, man. Awesome. Well, all right. So thanks again, everyone, and adios until next time.
Take care.